All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher. Today we are going to welcome in horse racing analyst and legend of the sport, Randy Moss, to preview the Breeders' Cup this weekend. Then at the end of the show, Drew and I will handicap James Winston and the Browns as home underdogs to the Chargers and talk about the Texans, who are, to some, surprisingly, underdogs to the Jets on Thursday night. But before we get to the humans on the football field, let's talk about the horses on the racetrack. I'll bring in Randy and Drew Dinsick. Randy, let's get stuck into it. Breeders' Cup. Let's start off with the favorite, City of Troy, at 5-2. Do you think this horse warrants favoritism?
I think he is a bet against with an exclamation point after bet against. Look, he's a very, very talented horse. There's no doubt about that. But there is more than just a little bit of hype here associated with the horse. And just simply the fact that Coolmore and Aidan O'Brien have been chasing the Kentucky Derby and the Breeders' Cup Classic for decades, like the white whale, and trying to win it. They've thrown everything possible at it. Most of the horses, to be fair, that they have tried in the Breeders' Cup Classic have been horses bred to run on grass. What gives them hope about City of Troy is that his sire is Justify, who was the American Triple Crown winner in 2018 and obviously a dirt horse extraordinaire. But on the female side of City of Troy's pedigree is a mare exclusively bred for turf by the stallion Galileo, who was one of the greatest stallions of the last 20 years on grass and was a horrific dirt stallion. You just saw anything by Galileo on dirt and automatically threw him out. And they'd be beaten 10, 15, 20 lengths. It's not like they'd be close, right? And this horse, maybe this is, you have to try to separate these horses somehow. This horse looks more like Galileo than Justify. Justify was a big, brutish, beautiful, statuesque chestnut. Galileo was a relatively small, ordinary-looking horse that was just a tremendous athlete. And that's exactly what City of Troy looks like. So would I be shocked if he wins? No, because he's talented. But as the favorite, you should be getting 6-1 on this horse based on the fact that he has never run on dirt before. And he's never had kickback before in his face. He's got an inside post position, so he's probably going to have to deal with that. There's just too many possible negatives here to back him as the favorite, in my opinion.
This is music to my ears. I have been struggling with which side of the coin to go on because, a trainer as brilliant as Aidan O'Brien and the connections as experienced as they are, electing to run this horse, which would have been even odds to win the turf, $5 million purse. Like this would have been the clear choice, I think, in the Breeders' Cup turf class. And instead they run him in the Classic, and you read that one of two ways. They have the confidence that he could do it, or this is a Hail Mary, maybe their only chance to win this race. And I love that you came down on that side of it, because that's where my head is at. And most of it is price. I mean, if he was in the 6-1 range, then I think we're thinking about this a little bit differently. But yeah, at 5-2, that makes very, very clear sense as the bet against. And I think that brings me to the second choice here, which I also am inclined to bet against. And it's for a little bit different reason. So in the last 8 years, we've seen a pretty heavy, I guess I would call it a sort of a change in tactics with the 3-year-olds, right? As 2-year-olds, they're a little bit more lightly raced. They come into their 3-year-old season and they are pointing at the Derby, at the Triple Crown. Like that is, the pinnacle of what they are expected to perform. And then if they run through the summer, you start to see them fatigue a little bit. And then by the time we get to the Classic, it's more the 4- and 5-year-olds who really kind of have the advantage in this race, at least over the last 8 years. I know the one exception being 2020 when they didn't even have spring meets. But all that said, Fierceness is your second choice. He was obviously disappointing in the Derby itself, but otherwise had a spectacular 2024. Best summer of any horse, of any age, let alone 3-year-olds. I'm wondering, do you feel like he still has one more kind of exceptional run in him this year? Will he fire in this race, or is the fatigue of, going back to back in the, the Jim Dandy and the Travers going to keep him from peak performance on Saturday?
I think he'll fire. He's at times been an inconsistent horse. The Kentucky Derby obviously was a spectacular failure. The first start of the year, he didn't run particularly well. So, I mean, there have always been question marks surrounding fierceness about how he would handle adversity. And if he had gotten an inside post position draw in the Classic, where perhaps he would be bottled in behind horses, which he's never really experienced before, then that would be a cause for concern. But he had an outside draw, so I think he'll run his race. Now, whether that's good enough to win, that's another question entirely. But I think he'll be right there. I really do. And to your point about the 3-year-olds, that's what makes this Breeders' Cup Classic such an anomaly. Because on paper, in my opinion, the best horses on paper are City of Troy, whether he handles dirt or not. I think he's a bet against. Fierceness, okay, Sierra Leone, and Forever Young. All 3-year-olds. This is an unusual year in that 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds haven't really stepped up to the plate as much this summer and fall as they do in most years.
Yep. No, totally agreed. And I'm glad you brought up Forever Young. That is a horse that I completely missed on at the Derby. People were buzzing about him like, the American class is weak this year. This is finally the year the Japanese are going to break through at the Kentucky Derby. And we saw him, prepping, and he was not impressive. Like just physically, he didn't stand out next to the rest of the, the rest of the class. The videos of him now, a little different. He looks like he kind of took his time off, grew pretty substantially, and they obviously gave him 4 months of rest after the Derby before ramping him back up for his prep race, where he had a poor start, but then ultimately ran a phenomenal race. I am now kind of looking at that as the time off being especially good for him, the fact that he's grown being meaningful for this particular race and in this challenging field. And if I only had one pick, it would be Forever Young in this race. Do you think that the Japanese finally break through? And I know that they would really be carrying forward success the last time this meet was held at Del Mar.
Yeah, there were 2 winners that the Japanese had, their very first 2 in Breeders' Cup history in 2021 at Del Mar. There was a horse called Love's Only You, who was no surprise at all. I mean, she had already proven herself as one of the best turf females in the world. But then there was a horse that they won with in the distaff called Marsh Lorraine, who was a no-hope long shot that looked like she had no business even being entered in the race. And lo and behold, she wins it. And now the floodgates have opened. They've brought 19 horses in all to America this year to try to tackle the Breeders' Cup. And you go back and look at the video of some of these horses that they brought, and the Japanese are going to make some noise on Friday and Saturday. They brought some really good horses. And Forever Young, might be at the top of the list. I think he's got a strong chance to win the Classic. I like this post position draw, post number 1. And look, Forever Young is 6 for 7 lifetime. The only race he lost was in the Kentucky Derby when he was beaten 2 noses. And you can make a very strong case that he was the best horse in the Kentucky Derby. I mean, he was mugged the length of the stretch by Sierra Leone, which the Churchill Downs stewards chose to ignore. And still, he was right there at the finish. And if he's improved at all, as you pointed out, physically from then to now, he's going to be pretty formidable in there. And he's 6-1 in the morning line, as opposed to 5-2 for City of Troy.
Indeed. Let's jump to the distaff. Randy, Torpedo Anna is a 4-5 odds-on favorite. Would you be taking Torpedo Anna over the field?
Not to win at 4-5, but she's probably going to be more like 2-5. Actually, when the gates open, in my opinion, I think they were being pretty conservative about 4-5, and that's only because Idiomatic, the defending champion of this race, dropped out this past week due to an injury. It was set up to be a nice showdown between Idiomatic and Torpedo Anna, and now it's just a pretty weak lineup of fillies and mares behind Torpedo Anna. The real question about Torpedo Anna, in everybody's mind, who really follows this closely, right? She was sensational in the Kentucky Oaks. They chose to run her against the males in the Travers Stakes, and she ran an amazing race in the Travers, the best race of her life in defeat, right? She almost ran down Fierceness and probably didn't get as good a trip as Fierceness got in that race. Okay. A lot of times when females run huge races against colts, you can go back in history and plot this, it takes a lot out of them. and they don't necessarily bounce back very well in their subsequent races. And Torpedo Anna has run once since the Travers Stakes. She was a very heavy favorite against a weak field in a race in Philadelphia called the Cotillion Stakes. And she won, but she didn't look nearly as good as she did in the Travers or the Kentucky Oaks. Now, her trainer, Kenny McPeak, says that was because he purposely under-prepared her for that race because he knew the competition was weak. He just wanted to give her a prep for the Breeders' Cup. And he says she'll be a whole lot better come Breeders' Cup Day. But trainers say that stuff all the time. And to be fair, he did say that before the race. It's not like he made excuses after the race. But is that sort of underwhelming performance a result of her being undertrained? Or is it a result of the after effects of such a hard race in the Travers Stakes? If it's the latter, then she might be somewhat vulnerable at 2-5 in the distaff. I just don't know, who in there you could back with any confidence against her because it's such a weak field behind her.
It sounds like you're a little disappointed not to get another Beholder Songbird chance to bet on the old vet against the up and comer.
But if
Bummer
she
that
does
Idiomatic
win,
will run.
and she looks, Drew, anything like she looked in the Kentucky Oaks and the Travers,
Yeah,
she will be a very strong candidate for Horse of the Year. Okay,
yeah.
that's
Her Acorn was pretty spectacular too. Yeah, she's had some good runs this year. As you look across the card, do you see any other opportunities to either put a couple of high likely singles in your exotics or bombs that are going to hit the board that we can to use to kind of fluff that up? Because people are kind of calling for this pick 5 on Saturday to be all time, in terms of payout.
As far as singles through the course of the Breeders' Cup, my God, we've got 14 races. On Friday, I think right off the bat, I don't know what kind of, pick whatever's. I haven't looked at the betting menu on Friday with any thoroughness, but the very first Breeders' Cup race is a race called the Juvenile Turf Sprint. Now, there's a Japanese horse in there that's an absolute rocket ship. His name is Ikoro Sieg. And my God, is he fast. You watch his videos. In his last race, he ran the fastest 6 furlongs on turf in 25 years at the particular racetrack he was running at. And he did that despite breaking last out of the starting gate and then rushing up to set the pace. He's extremely fast. So he would be a single in any sort of multiple race wagers. Coolmore has a horse also on Friday called Lake Victoria that runs in the Juvenile Fillies turf. To me, it looks like a solid exacta in there, one way or the other, between Lake Victoria and an American filly named Thought Process, who's been based in California. The rub here is that California-based 2-year-olds on grass in the Breeders' Cup are 0 for 58. They are normally complete throwouts, but Thought Process looked really good visually, and her numbers were good. So she might be good enough to overcome that sort of built-in California bias that we've all developed against the 2-year-old turf horses out here. Other than that, on Friday, not much. On Saturday, Cogburn in the turf sprint.
Okay.
The self-proclaimed, I say self-proclaimed, horses can't talk. The owners of Windstar call him the fastest horse in the world, right? And he's really, really fast. The Europeans are throwing one in there that they're really high on against him called Bradsell, but I'll be shocked if Bradsell's as good as Cogburn. So that might be a single. I think Ways and Means is going to be a short price in the Filly Mare Sprint, but she's got some competition in there, some pretty nice horses behind her. So I wouldn't really feel that comfortable singling her. The distaff, obviously, Torpedo Anna, I think would probably be a single. Other than that, I don't see a lot of, single possibilities that I can think of right now that just jump off. The mile's tough. The Filly Mare turf is pretty tough. The Dirt Mile might be a possibility. The Dirt Mile domestic product by the Clarvage Stable Chad Brown horse. Last race on the card on Saturday is got the perfect running style for a race that's just loaded with early speed. And he drew pretty well. So I think domestic product is going to be a potential single as well. Yeah.
Okay.
And one more thing about the Classic, right? You're always looking for prices. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a horse in the Classic that I think is a pretty good long shot play, especially for your exotics. If you look at all the horses in the race and you say, okay, who has run the fastest races? Any of them. That's what you look for, right? It's a foot race. Who can get from point A to point B the fastest, right? And there's a horse in there that right now is 15-1 in the program, and his name is Arthur's Ride. And he ran a couple of races earlier this year, an allowance race at Saratoga and the Whitney. And in both of those races, he won and ran as fast as any horse in this race has ever run. Then he came back and kind of laid an egg in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. But there's not a whole lot of sheer early speed in here. He's probably going to set the pace. They'll probably leave him alone on the front end. He's trained by Bill Mott, who is one of the best trainers in the world, especially at pointing a horse for a particular race and getting a peak effort. And I think you can do a whole lot worse than Arthur's Ride at 15-1 if you want to try to make a value play here.
Okay, love it. Well, lots of great info to sift through there. Randy, thanks very much for your time. Can you let people know what you're working on in Del Mar this week leading up to Saturday?
Yeah, Friday and Saturday. We'll be on all day. Either it's a mixture. Check your local listings of USA Network and NBC and Peacock. It'll be on Peacock both days if you like your streaming options more than your regular terrestrial television options. But yeah, we'll be working. We'll even do some of the pre-Breeders' Cup races on Friday and Saturday, a couple of them. So long days, but hey, Del Mar is my favorite place in America. And it's got little to do with the racetrack. It's just and so anytime you can spend a couple days at Del Mar, I'm trying to embrace the whole beach bum thing, shorts, flip flop. I got a day growth of beard here, I'm trying to hang out. I'm trying to be one of the locals.
Indeed. Well, worse fates than being stuck out in Del Mar for a while. Randy, thanks very much for your time and enjoy it out there.
I enjoy talking to you guys, as always.
Cheers. Okay, before we get to Justin Herbert and Jameis Winston, the world's fastest thoroughbreds, come together this weekend in Del Mar to compete for the title of world champion at the Breeders' Cup. Catch the action from Southern California on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. All right, well, Southern California's own Justin Herbert, at least their quarterback, he is on his way to the less sunny Cleveland, though sunnier outlook for that team. Chargers are 2-point favorites. That line is coming down, though. It's one. Some places I'm looking now. The total is 42.5. How do you rate the Browns now, Drew? That we're out of the Deshaun era, however temporarily. Jameis Winston is in there who can move the ball and also can throw 4 picks on his day. So, yeah. What is the shift in team rating from Deshaun to Jameis? Everything else being equal.
I mean, you basically start over. For a couple reasons, not just because of the change of the quarterback, but because the offensive line is healthier. The time that they allowed Jameis Winston to operate against the Ravens was shocking. That was sort of a calling card of the Deshaun Watson start to the season, was he was consistently under duress with all the injuries to that offensive line. Now they look healthy. And actually you have 2 phenomenal offensive lines in this game. So there may not be tons of opportunities for pressures and game-changing sacks for these 2 pass rush heavy defenses. And the other kind of key thing I think for handicapping the Browns is you got to start over with your defensive rating, because the injuries that they have now sustained to some key players in their back 7 are massive. Denzel Ward is not playing especially healthy right now, and he is one of the singular most important individual defensive players, in my opinion, across the entire NFL, because they don't have very good backfill there. And if he is unable to go, and he is obviously, is a CB1 that smashed up against a weak wide receiver core, but his individual impact in terms of making game-changing stops and really wiping a receiver out of the game is huge. And so you probably lose JOK in this one, who's your most important linebacker. And then just in general, like the safety class has been unhealthy / ineffective at times this year. And I think that makes this Browns defense somewhat vulnerable. So the offense has a much higher floor with the fact that the offensive line is healthy. I think they surely have a higher ceiling, but the uncertainty now is huge because Jameis Winston is capable of creating both explosive plays and backbreaking turnovers. So Bradley, Nick Chubb, I think getting healthier and getting more opportunities out of the backfield as we go through these next couple weeks kind of helps them have a little bit of a two-way attack instead of just through the passing game. It's obvious that Jameis Winston and Jerry Jeudy have a decent connection, and then Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman stepped up and provided some pretty solid pop at the wide receiver position. So I think this is pretty clearly a top half of the NFL offense as currently rostered. The question is, is their defense and their pass defense in particular going to be good enough to, allow them to put together wins and salvage their season? And that's where I kind of start to see the case falling apart, because I think that they are living and dying with, kind of specific singular outstanding play from Ward combined with, just show-stopping performance by, Myles Garrett at creating chaotic plays. And against this offensive line, as well as Joe Alt's playing, as well as Slater's playing, I don't know that Myles Garrett is going to be much of a factor. This is the third week in a row now at home for the Cleveland Browns. LA is flying across the country with a pretty significant travel disadvantage, playing in an early time window. So, there are some, kind of X factors here that would make you point towards Cleveland. But my fare in this one is actually closer to LA, the Chargers 3 points favorite. So I laid -1.5 here. And I think ultimately this is going to be decided by Justin Herbert being the better quarterback. But surely the Cleveland Browns have to be taken seriously these next handful of weeks, as long as their offensive line is healthy and as long as Jameis Winston is capable of putting up these explosive plays.
Yeah. Do you think it's fair to rate the Chargers as about a half point better than your average team on neutral, and the Browns as 3 points worse than your average team on neutral? Those type of ranges.
I am higher than that on the Chargers, and I'm higher than that on the Browns. I would right now say that Browns for me are about 2 points worse than an average team on neutral. And this is, again, kind of dinging them because I'm expecting Denzel Ward might not be able to play. Yep. If Ward's out there, then I'm actually closer to 1 point, closer to 1 point worse than average. And this is a massive upgrade from the end of the Deshaun Watson era, where I was rating these guys as 6.5 points worse than average. So, this is a huge change. And again, I want to not just entirely wrap it around the neck of the quarterback, but also kind of point out that the offensive line getting healthier is going to be hugely important for them. For me, the Chargers right now, the offense continues to be pretty underrated by market. I think that if you can kind of, if you can protect Herbert to the degree that they are, it doesn't matter who he's throwing to. And in general, this is a team that is not making backbreaking mistakes. So I think the Chargers right now are a top 12 offense. I think the Chargers defense is a hair overrated, but I would have the Chargers close to 1.5 points better than an average team on neutral right now as currently rostered. So I think Chargers right now would be my pick for the 5 seed in the West. In the AFC, 5 seed in the AFC. Too much NBA on the brain. But yeah, a 5 seed in the AFC, top wild card spot. But I have them as a pretty low likelihood of getting, being able to run down the Chiefs.
Okay, that makes sense to me. All right, before we get to Texans-Jets, Sunday Night Football heads to the Great Northern this week when Justin Jefferson and the Vikings host the Colts. Might need to get Anthony Richardson out of the promo photo at some point this week. The uncertainty there. NBC and Peacock will lead you to kick off with coverage starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Okay, Thursday night football, Texans at Jets. Jets 2-point favorites. Total is 42 flat. Drew, I think I've got more confused texts from people about this line than any other game so far this season, wondering why the Jets are favored because they're 2-6. I tend to agree more with the market here that the Jets should be favored and that these teams are, basically even, or maybe in their current health states that the Jets are the slightly better team. But what do you make out of this matchup? Did the line jump out to you as wrong or interesting?
No, I played the Jets. I think this is Jets. And much like I've been running out of rope backing certain teams and positions this year, this is probably my last time going to well with these guys if they don't show up. And I just generally like the absence of Diggs, which I think is pretty much a formality at this point. We all kind of know he's not playing in this game. I don't know if there will be clarification as to the degree to which he may be out for the season or not before this game kicks off, but his availability seems very, very low likelihood, which means Houston's trotting out a receiving core led by Xavier Hutchinson, John Mechie, Tank Dell, and while CJ Stroud has been able to do pretty irrationally impossible things with third and long this season, a lot of that has been because he's had great wide receivers to kind of lean into, and now that's not really part of the equation. On top of that, the Texans obviously, and CJ Stroud in particular, had a very similar situation last year where they went to the Jets without Nico Collins. They were men down in the receiving core, and CJ Stroud had his worst game as a pro. And you can, I think, expect that a lot of the same concepts still exist for this Jets defense, even if they have taken a small step backwards. I will acknowledge that the linebacker play for the Jets has me extremely concerned, and that if this is a Bobby Slowick classic, obvious telegraphed run on first down, second down, they may find more success in this game than they typically have this season just because of the linebacking, play of the Jets right now. But I will also say that, the coverage and the ability to convert these really difficult down and distance, conversions for the Houston Texans, I don't think will be likely in this one. And then on the flip side, the Texans pass rush has been quite good. But I think the pass protection for the Jets has gotten a little bit better every week as they've kind of gotten into this portion of their season. And certainly it seems like Aaron Rodgers is starting to deal with just sort of the straight come at me with a front four type of pass rush better. And he is still struggling a bit with the blitz, but I don't know that the Texans really have the personnel available on their back seven to be able to execute that. So, yeah, I think this is pretty obviously, if you've been waiting and hoping and looking for opportunities to sell high on this Texans team because you believe that they are getting it done with smoke and mirrors and are very lucky to have the wins that they have, and probably, maybe looking at their against the spread numbers and like, man, this team can't cover to save their lives. Well, like this is, I think, kind of your Super Bowl of opportunities because people have run out of interest to continue to back these Jets, combined with looking for an opportunity to sell high on the Texans. So it's a good kind of perfect storm, I think, to play New York. And the only thing I guess in the back of my head that I'm a little bit concerned by is that you have a short week here for the Jets, and they may not be able to fix any of the issues that we saw on offense against the Patriots. So this is it for me. Last stand, New York Jets. Let's go.
Yeah, I think if you like the Texans, you may be better off not even backing them at the line or the money line and just take Joe Mixon over 76.5 rushing yards, given that is seemingly going to be their path to victory. He's finished 4 games healthy this season. He's gone over 100 rushing yards in all of them. The Jets' defensive fronts, it's just drawing dead. Like, these guys just can't defend the run outside of Quinn and Williams. Like, Kinlaw, Michael Clemens is one of, I think, the weakest players in the NFL. In terms of what he's given them week to week. Will McDonald is atrocious against the run, even if he's a good edge rusher. And this defense just isn't, it's just not what it was last year or the year before. Like, Sauce Gardner has taken a big step back. The safeties are injured. DJ Reed is great, but like, DJ Reed right now is their best corner, and he's what? Is he 5'9"? Like, he's getting posted by Mac Hollins a few weeks ago. So it's just, the defense is, it's the 14th ranked unit by EPA, and that's probably about where they're at the moment. And I think the thing with the Jets, though, is that I think the offense is legitimately good, and it should get better as the season progresses, as they get more continuity and Devontae gets more integrated. Like, it's still, for all his sins, and he's clearly not what he was, Aaron Rodgers is still a good quarterback, and he has Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams and a competent offensive line, and the scheme doesn't seem to be much. But I think that you get so swallowed up in results, and it's so kind of comical that the Jets with Rodgers are 2-6. If they had Kaimi Fairbairn instead of Greg Zuerlein, they'd be 5-3. Like, they would have beaten the Broncos if Zuerlein missed like a 48-yarder there or something.
Extra point too.
Yeah, they would have beaten the Bills, and they would have beaten the Pats. And so all of it, and also, like, by the underlying metrics, they basically played the Steelers to a draw. It's just some insane plays that went against them. Turnovers, which were a little bit fluky. Like, they were up 15-6 in that game, like minus 650 on the live money line. Like, it's not inconceivable right now that the Jets could be leading the AFC East. But just, that's, 8 games is a small sample, and this is how it's gone. They're 2-6, and now they're plus 610 to make the playoffs, and that's just how football goes sometimes. What do you make of the Texans' defense at the moment? Because the offense is getting all the press, but the defense, like, Will Anderson's having this great sack season, at least. He's the second favorite for Defensive Player of the Year, which I don't agree with, but he's certainly being very loud. They give up a ton of explosive plays down the field. It just doesn't feel like it's a fine unit. It's not a weakness of the team, but it doesn't seem to be perhaps the all-world unit that some were hoping coming into the season.
I agree, but that said, if you have to give credit for how they're winning, a lot because of the way their defense is playing. So yeah, I mean, I right now would rank them in the top 10, largely based on the ability for them to put away games with the pass rush. That's a fragile way to live. And as you mentioned, they are definitely prone to, if the pass rush is not getting home, giving up explosive plays in the passing game. I would look at particularly the linebacking core and the fact that they cannot stay healthy as sort of the biggest weakness here, outside of Derek Stingley Jr., who did not take the major step forward I was expecting this year. The rest of that secondary has issues and problems. Lassiter's been in and out with injury. Jalen Petrie, I think, can be picked on. Kalen Bullock can be picked on, certainly. And Jimmy Ward is maybe a little bit past his prime. So, yeah, I mean, like, basically outside of the front four, there are just opportunities to prey on everything in that secondary. And an experienced player like Aaron Rodgers better be able to make that happen, considering the weapons he's working with.
Indeed. Just as we're recording, Joe Flacco has been named the starter.
Wow.
Escape this man out of my life. The line just moved 2 points towards the Colts, down to +5 now. So that's a real kick to the teeth for Anthony Richardson when Joe Flacco is moving the line from 7 to 5. We can talk about that on our show that drops Friday morning.
Diggs ACL's out of the bag now, too.
Diggs ACL as well, unfortunately. All right, we are done for today. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also, a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. Thanks again to Randy Moss. From myself and Drew, we'll see you soon.